What's up? What's happening on the Hoffman Show? 1 week from the NFL draft, the Commanders have sent their fans into a tizzy. Did they make a mistake by hosting multiple quarterbacks in a top golf battle for the ages yesterday in Ashburn? This is what it's come to. People have asked me, I feel like for about a week and a half now, are you sick of talking about this draft? And there have been days when I'm a little over it. But honestly, it's been really cool, I think, to dive even deeper. I've really enjoyed some of the content that some of my friends in the media world have put out, diving even deeper into some of the picks later on in this draft. And then yesterday, it felt like everybody ran face first into the stupid, silly season wall. And I can't believe how wrong some people are. And I don't do this often where I just go, y'all don't get it. But to the people, which includes plenty of smart media people, to the people who think that the Commanders have just somehow screwed up this draft process because they brought in multiple quarterbacks on one visit because you have never heard of that happening before, boy, do I have news for you. Hopefully in 10 minutes you'll agree that it's very silly. So let's dive into it. First and foremost, this is not new. Bill Belichick, amongst others, have come out and said, yeah, we bring in multiple prospects all the time. I don't know why this got out in this way. I don't know why this is being presented this way. I don't know why people are freaking out in this way, probably because Jaden Daniels' agent might be liking tweets. But Mike Florio, who's always a rational person, wink, wink, who always has unmitigated always has the clearest views of anything involving interpersonal skills, wink, wink. He crushed this. Very silly. Very silly. This is something that's been going on for years. Belichick told McAfee's show yesterday that we used to bring as many as a dozen people, and we'd have multiple quarterbacks and multiple receivers and multiple tight ends, and we get them all in a room and see how they interact with each other. And that's the thing. When I heard this, I was like, this is genius. Because what's important to remember on the front end here is that this is not a Topgolf visit or whatever other meetings and things that they did yesterday when these guys were all together. This is not the entirety of the evaluation. This is a piece of the evaluation. And if you've been listening to those of us that talk about this team daily and you're locked in here on the local level, you know that one of the big things that Adam Peters and company are trying to figure out based off of how they scout and what they're trying to build, not just Peters, but Dan Quinn, is who these young men are as people. And if you want to understand who these young men are as people, put them in this situation. See what happens when J.J. McCarthy and Drake May and Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix are all together. And by the way, they're all together when they know it's a job interview. Who's cool, calm, and collected? Who's freaking out? Who's asking questions? Who is trying to act like they know everything? Who is a natural leader? Who is forcing it? Who is cutting it up with the guys? Who's reserved and standoffish? Who goes out of their way to get to know the janitor's name or show respect to a guy like Doug Williams if they see him around the building? Who does all of these things and who doesn't? Versus very structured, very straight line. I walk in, maybe my agent's even with me for part of it, or maybe he's not. But I get there and I meet with the GM and I meet with the coach and I maybe meet with the quarterback's coach and the offensive coordinator and I meet with the owner and I meet with all these people one-on-one and I get to do all the buttoned-up media trading that I did. I don't care about who you... I do care some about who you are in that situation, but by the way, I got that situation if I'm the teams at the Combine. I got that situation at Pro Day. I got that situation where you were in control. I want to know what happens when you don't know I'm watching and you're at the lunch table with the other guys that we brought in on their 30 visits. Because I want to know who you are. And that is a part of the evaluation. Now, I'll pause here to reiterate the most important point here. It's a part of the evaluation, not the whole evaluation. This does not override all of the scouting, all of the tape watching, all of the everything that they've done to get to this point. But if you take in the consensus opinions, and some are really strong on one guy and really weak on the other, and some are over here and over there. Some people have them fairly even like I do. Like the opinions are all over the place. And when you aggregate them out and you come up with kind of a consensus composite score, Drake May and Jaden Daniels especially, but even J.J. McCarthy are all pretty even. And maybe you have one that you slightly prefer because of play style, because of a certain trait, whatever. But all of a sudden, who you are as a person might be a separator. How you act in that building and how you interact with your teammates or potential teammates or your rivals is really telling about the character that you're going to bring to the most important position in sports. So when people poo-poo this and think that like this is some wacky Josh Harris thing or that this is childish or whatever, I didn't even read most of it. I caught some headlines and I saw some tweets, and I know that sometimes that's the worst thing, but like it kind of captured the anger of just people are like, this is wacky. And then the Commanders screwed it up because now Jaden's agent is mad. Like, no, they pick the player. The player doesn't pick them. And by the way, if this kind of thing makes you not want to come to a specific place, then frankly, I don't want you. As long as it's close. Now, I don't think it's the kind of thing that if they've got Jaden Daniels way ahead, they'll take him and it's going to be water under the bridge real fast. I'm not crazy. I'm not going to be like, throw the baby out with the bathwater. But if you're close and you're in a competition, I want to know, do you feel entitled or are you willing to just show up and be you and finish out the process? And for an organization that is incredibly process-oriented, as Adam Peters reiterated today, running out through the end and who is willing to run with you is part of the evaluation. And so I would love to know, and I assume on some level we'll find out after the pick. I want to know what happened yesterday. When you go to Topgolf, are you willing, even if you don't golf, are you willing to compete? Are you willing to have a little fun? Are you willing to even make, like, if you're awesome at golf, great. If you're not, like, I don't care how good you are at golf. I care whether or not you're willing to have fun with the guys. I want to see how you interact with people. And by the way, I also want to know, like, is Jaden Daniels asking Drake May, hey, man, I saw this highlight that you had against whoever. What'd you see there? Like, I want to know who loves football. Who's paying attention to the other guys? Who's in it? And who's just on their phone scrolling Instagram, TikTok. Pick your favorite app. That's what this is about. It doesn't change the film. It doesn't change what the coaches say, what the teammates say. It's a chance to experience who they are as people in person. And if you don't think that's valuable, I don't know what to tell you, other than you're wrong. Like, rarely am I that in your face, but you're wrong. Again, doesn't override the film. If Michael Pratt, the quarterback from Tulane, was in yesterday and he was the best guy of the bunch, it doesn't make him worth taking at number 2 over the rest of these guys or for passing on one of these guys. Now, talent's the number 1. But when the talent's close, who you are is going to ultimately tell me how likely you are to maximize your career and reach your goals and be the leader that we need you to be for this football team. Which is why what they did yesterday, even if it's something that most of us had never heard of before, even if it has happened without us hearing about it, is a genius move and the right move to finish off this draft evaluation of these quarterbacks. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. But, of course, always want to talk it out. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Take your calls. We're 1 week from the draft. We'll hear every pick of the 2024 NFL Draft right here on the Team 980. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where I feel like we had some folks who just figure out that this is what we do every day, Ant. Our guy Michael, who's a big fan, appreciate you, Michael, for checking us out here live. He goes, "Oh, you're live." We are every single day, all 3 hours.
I was about to say,
and it's 7 o'clock season, baby.
Uh-huh.
It's really all 3 hours.
Yes, sir.
We are out of games that are kick us off the air early every single day. And of course, if you miss it, this show, the way YouTube works, is on demand. Anthony, of course, does the podcast as well that you can catch in your favorite podcast app. Just search for The Hoffman Show. We're taking your calls, though, 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980 is the phone number where you can call in and talk about what I just said and what you heard about the Commanders hosting multiple quarterbacks yesterday. If you're just tuning in, my ultimate takeaway is this is a great thing. You learn about who these young men are as people. You get to watch them in a more natural environment surrounded by their peers. You get to see who emerges as a leader. You get to see who's standoffish and just kind of off to the side, who you want to be the leader of your franchise. And while it doesn't override the tape and it doesn't override all the other parts of your evaluation, it does give you a different sense than just relying on what other people are telling you. Let's go to Keith in Clinton to get us started. Keith, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Hoffman, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. Appreciate your call.
Hey, listen, I'm telling you, I love the idea of having everybody together. I actually did that when I interviewed people that were trying to get this one job at headquarters, and I brought the last three finalists in at the same time, just because I wanted to throw them off and get out of a habit. I figured somebody's conversation would throw somebody else's prepared conversation off. It worked very well. Now, as far as this is concerned, bringing everybody in like they did, we are sitting back complaining. We want somebody to come in and do something different. We don't want to be in the same situation we're in every year. And when we finally get somebody that's coming in here doing something different because they're not used to it, and I'm including the media too. I mean, the media has to start up some stuff anyway because they want people to read their writing. So they got to always try to stir up something. But the fans, y'all out there itching about everything, little thing, and then we get something different, you still doing it. You're not going to be happy. And if this thing turns out to where we end up going to the championship, the NFC championship game, everybody's going to be cool with everything. Why don't you just sit back, shut up? You got something different going on. I know my mother told me, stop saying shut up. You got something different that we're trying to do. Sit back and see if it works. Stop falling in line with the media rights about something negative about what they're doing, and try to back them up. They're giving us something different. They seem like they're serious. I'm open for whatever they're going to try to do. Jesus.
Keith, I'm glad we get that off your chest. I will say this about media, though, real quick, not to get defensive of media, because it was funny. We had Charles Davis on Take Command. Amazing conversation today, and Charles did this too, where he's like the media, and he's like, "Look, I'm in the media. I get it, and so we can't. I'm not trying to pull myself out. I do think sometimes media and social media in modern times gets pushed together, and so you do have a lot of people that are tweeting a lot and." Also reporters, and sometimes they're saying different things, and that gets mushed together in one big media conglomerate. I think a lot of fans, to your point, though, I think a lot of fans were driving this narrative. I did see some media members for sure, and obviously Florio was kind of the big one. And I don't know, man. It does feel like there's a lot of people that are looking for something to hack at with the Commanders and want it to be the same old thing when it's very so clearly not.
Right. I'm just saying, look, just stop with the nonsense, man. It's a headache. They're making the show seem like, you know what, I'm tired of hearing the same nonsense. Can we just go positive and try to back them up? I want Jaden. But if they don't choose him, they know more than I know. So I'm going to sit back, I'm going to relax, and I'm going to see what they have to say. I don't want to look like a fool, and when everything comes together, we like, man, they knew what they were doing, and I wasted all that energy being next. So, man. But anyway, thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it. I love the show.
It's a great call. I really appreciate it. And Keith has something there that most people, I would say, in and outside of the league that enter these spaces lack, which is humility. The humility to go, I do not know as much as other people. And even, I think most importantly, we talked about this a couple of times this week, the humility to, if you are in the league, if you are Adam Peters, and you know more than anybody, hopefully at this point, theoretically, about these guys. You are the ultimate decision maker. You are very skilled at that. To have the humility still to go, I'm not sure. Here's my best guess. And that, because the clock is ticking. We're now a week away. But the way you operate when you have the humility to go, I don't know, like I don't, the last podcast I listened to on the way into work today included one of the best, like, pro Drake May arguments I've heard. And it's from a guy that I've listened to and a guy that I've referenced a lot in Nate Tice. But Nate just did a really, really good job of articulating why he's so high on Drake. And I walked away from it and I was like, I kind of gotten off of May and fallen back into leaning towards Daniels. But was that a mistake? And I know, like, my gut tells me McCarthy's the best of the three. Truly. Like, when I watch the three of them and I put down the clicker, I put down my remote, I got the best feelings after I watched J.J. McCarthy. I can explain to you why. I'm not going to sit here and do it now because we've done that bit a billion times. But I also know that I'm missing a ton of information. And I think that is the thing where I can get to a point where I can say, hey, I'm at least comfortable enough with all three that if they take any of them, I trust that the pieces that I'm missing that might lead me to slightly favor one over the other are favoring the guy that they took. But that's the thing, is that's why you gather all this info, gather all this intel, and why you have something like what happened yesterday, where you get these guys together and you try to understand who they are. Because if you understand, I love this line from Dane Brugler that he talks about when he puts together all the biographical information for the Beast, their big draft guide at The Athletic. If you understand where someone came from, it helps you understand where they're going to go. And this is a data point that can help you understand where someone comes from, how to treat them, and what's important to them. Let's go to Kurt in District Heights. Kurt, keep things rolling here for us on the Hoffman Show.
How you doing, Craig?
I'm good, bro.
It's been a couple weeks since I called. I hope I still have my table in the room.
Oh, we got you. We got you. We just
Okay.
pulled up a chair, bro. So here we are.
I like the way you broke it down. You broke it down beautifully. The reasoning why they, would have these guys all in at the same time and going to Top Golf and all that. And I really hope that, like, national pundits like Chris Sims and all these other guys out here being so critical of what they're doing could hear what you have to say about it, because once I heard what you said about it, it makes perfect sense what they did, okay? And I don't see a problem with it at all. And I think basically from national media to local media to fans and just about everybody, it's been a waiting game for this draft, and they're just talking about it so much. Now they want to find every little thing to nitpick and criticize, as far as trying to, what they're doing and why they're doing it, and also evaluating those three players. It's like, it's almost like so magnified. Just keep doing it repetitively. Then you keep coming up with new stuff here and there. So I just think at the end of the day, I think Peters knows what he wants, and I think he really won't decide on who he's going to pick until draft night, when he hears everybody's final offer in terms of whether he moves off of that pick or not. If he doesn't move off of that pick, I think he knows what he wants to do.
Well, that's
just my feeling.
Yeah, no, Kurt, appreciate the call as always. Another good one. Your seat is safe. I think that when you, like Adam talked today, and we're going to play some bites for you as we go here, play a bunch of them later on in the 6 o'clock hour. We might hit one or two over the next half hour in between some of the calls here. But Peter said today, like, I'm pretty happy at 2, and it's hard for me to imagine us trading the pick, which is code for, yo, if someone really wants it, like, whatever y'all have offered so far ain't remotely close to good enough. Now, he also has no incentive to tell the truth there. He could be like, man, Vegas is so desperate for Jaden Daniels. They've offered me 3 firsts, and I think if I just go out here and pretend like I'm not interested, play hard to get, they might be dumb enough to go try to find a 4th first rounder or something crazy, right? Like, who knows? Like, his incentives here are to use the media and not necessarily the media in terms of like the people. He's not trying to use John Keim or Nikki Javala or Sam Fortier. It's trying to use the platform, the public nature of a press conference to manipulate the market to his advantage. He also might just be telling the truth and is genuinely happy. And I think you're right that he has to know who's the favorite right now. But there are things that they're still flushing out. And he verbatim said today, I guess paraphrase, said today, there's no rush. We have a week. We'll probably know who we want by early next week. So there's that. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. That is the phone number for you to call in and talk about this story where the Commanders have welcomed in multiple quarterbacks on their 30 visits yesterday, and it has sent a certain part of the media into a tizzy, for a certain part of the fan base into a tizzy. And I do want to follow up on the media side of this, actually, because I have some thoughts about what drives certain people in the media. And I think it's a larger discussion that absolutely fits very snugly around this one. We'll discuss that and take more of your calls next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Taking your calls on whether or not the Commanders made a mistake of some kind, bringing in multiple quarterbacks for their 30 visits all at once. Apparently took them to Topgolf, had them in the building, did some of the meetings together. I think it's a great move. I think it's a chance to see how they interact, see who steps up as a leader, see who handles that well, see who feels threatened. I don't want someone who feels threatened. I want someone who's confident. And it goes to the point, Rick is commenting on the YouTube stream, oh, the pundits are laughing at them. Who cares? The thing about being confident Like, there's a difference between confidence and bravado. Confidence is, I really don't care what you think of me. Bravado is, I don't care what you think of me. Like, one is fake. One is real. And the thing is, bravado means if I wind up being right in the end, I'm going to laugh back at you and be like, ha ha ha, you idiots didn't know what you're talking about anyway. And confidence is, I still don't care what they think. I'm not going to laugh at them because I literally didn't care in the first place. I'm going to do what I think is right because it's right. That's confidence. That is real, like, cojones. That is real gangster stuff. And that's the way Adam Peters is operating. He doesn't care what Mike Florio says. You know who did care? Everyone else who held that job the last bunch of years. Like 30. You want to be good? Don't care. Do what's right. Don't worry about the politics. Worry about the policy, if you will. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Ramallah. Ramallah, you're on the Hoffman Show.
Oh, yes. How you doing?
I'm good.
Oh, yeah. So I did kind of think it was a mistake because I remember listening to Jaden Daniels, and he was saying that, he just want a team to believe in him. And that's for any, any quarterback, that you have coming, you owe them just as much respect as you're looking for. And, just show them that you have enough respect for him to really give him a chance to interview him. I really think that Jaden... Go ahead.
I think that's an interesting point. Like, that is the most compelling argument that I've heard of why this could possibly be a mistake. I still don't think it is, but I think that's compelling, the idea of believing in someone and just being like, you're our guy. But I also think that would assume that they've made up their mind, and they might not. And I think you can also eventually, once you draft him, you're just like, hey man, like you had to interview before you got the job. You got the job. Now let's roll. And if someone is needing, like, to be, I don't want to say baby because that's too strong and like that is infantilizing the process. But like if someone needs that, I don't know that they're gonna have the mental fortitude to play quarterback in the NFL. Like, playing quarterback in the NFL is hard. And if you can't survive the interview process, that does tell me something about you.
True. But in my opinion, I think Jaden Daniels is the clear-cut number 2, if not the number 1. If you just look at his trajectory is what he's done in the last 5 years. He's a 4.0 grade, 4.0 student.
Yeah, but I don't disagree that there's a lot to like there. For saying 5 years, like, he didn't throw for 20 touchdowns in his first 4, but he was incredible in his 5th. He is a 4.0 student. Like, his leadership skills are off the chart. There's a lot. He's accurate. Like, there's a lot to like. But there's also people that would tell you the same thing about Drake May and J.J. McCarthy. And there's even some people that would tell you that about Michael Penix, that are like, he's just as good. And so, what we have to do, I think, when evaluating the process is take our own evaluations out of it. I think that's the only way to do this fairly. Ramal, it's a great call. I appreciate it. I think you brought up an interesting point there. One thing that I will say, though, is when it comes to, like, Florio or Chris Sims or some of these other guys that are criticizing this, and I would say a lot of those guys wind up criticizing a lot of things. It just goes to a point that I was talking after we had Tom Haberstroh on last week. Peel back the curtain. Tom and I taped earlier in the day. We didn't. Tom wasn't with us live, but the NBA writer who wrote about some of the refereeing changes that had happened, and I've known Tom for a decade, and so we were catching up after we got done taping, and we were talking about the state of journalism, like big, grandiose discussion. And there's a word that we came back to as we were talking about, like, he had just been on an episode of Pablo Torre Finds Out. And Pablo's doing this incredible podcast where he somehow is doing, like, deep dive journalism on a weekly basis. It's nuts what he's able to produce. But it all stems from a place of curiosity. And to me, like, that's, if you want to know who the people that I like that do these kinds of jobs, it's the people who reach for curiosity over criticism. It's easy to sit back and just lob bombs at every decision anyone makes that's not with the consensus, or even is, there's just a bunch of sheep following all the people, or like, everybody knows you should do the other thing. Like, that's lazy and it's easy. And guess what? It works. It works. I don't know why, but it works. works being a relative term to it gets those people noticed. And in the attention economy, attention's good for your own personal economy. A lot of those people wind up rising the ranks in this business and getting paid a lot of money, and it's just not that hard. Being curious is hard. Searching for actual information is hard. Being willing to put your own gut instinct of, that's dumb, to the side and instead go, why would they do that? And having the fortitude to, and the curiosity and the ability to go find an answer, whether it's by reading something, whether it's by making a phone call, like that to me is way not just more interesting and quote unquote better, but like it's actually more entertaining. Like, why, if all you're gonna do is just sit back and lob bombs at people, like you don't need a platform to do that outside of Twitter. Just quote tweet a bunch of stuff with like, this is dumb. No thoughts, nothing extra. Just be a critic, in the sense that you're providing criticism at all times. But I prefer when critic is short for critical, as in there's actual critical thinking, and that stems from curiosity. Are you willing to challenge the things that you believe when presented with a new idea? And I just think a lot of people aren't. They'd rather live in their comfort zone. And I think especially that's true in the media space, because there's no real penalty for being wrong. If all you ever do is go with the crowd, when you're wrong, the crowd's wrong, it's zero risk. You're not even putting yourself out there. It's part of the reason it's lazy. You get to look bold with zero risk. And so, yeah, if you're Mike Florio today, you just bomb Adam Peters because you haven't heard of people doing this, or some person that you were talking to thought it was dumb and it was mad, or maybe you genuinely think it's a bad idea. But did you ever take a second to consider that it could be a good one? That would be my question. Curiosity. It did more than kill the cat. Let's go to Noel. Noel, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig. How's it going? Thanks
Good,
for
man.
taking my call yet again. Look, I agree with you, and I agree that for this process, they have to do every little single thing to make sure that they make the right decision. And bringing all the guys in, just seeing how competitive they are, not only just on the field, but off the field, I think is extremely valuable. And I think a lot of the pundits out there, and again, like maybe there's a part of me that believes it too, that the pick is going to be Jaden Daniels. This front office doesn't have to go by with what everybody and all the pundits and what all of the general consensus is amongst the media members. They can do whatever they want as far as their process in getting this correct and getting it right. Because the goal is to win a Super Bowl. Like that's what the goal is for every
Right.
team, and it starts with the quarterback. So do what you have to do. Put in the extra work. You don't have to make a decision 1 week before the draft. Just put in the extra work and do what you need to do, and it's totally fine with me. And if there's one little thing where, like, let's say, like, Monday or Tuesday of next week, like, days before before the draft, they find out something that's really important, and then they all pivot, change their minds, and the consensus change, that's fine. It's totally fine with me. So I'm in agreement with you, and yeah, look, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with changing what you initially thought was your decision, then something happened to then shift it. That's doing your due diligence. It's totally fine.
100%. Your phone's eating it here at the end of the call, but I appreciate your call as always. Always smart, always thoughtful. And in this case, happens to agree. But I think that to that point, as you go through the draft process, there's a very long list of questions you're trying to answer. And I think where some people get twisted is you can't answer them all when the season's over. Because some people are like, they haven't played a game in months. How could you possibly change? Well, yeah, the film hasn't changed. Now, you might get new eyes on the film, and those new eyes, your coaches might see something different, better or worse, that changes your film grade. even after all the games have been played, because someone with a different set of eyes and a different skill set and a different perspective watches it and likes or doesn't like something that they see. But when it comes to figuring out who the person is, how they work, what's important to them, do they love football? You can get those answers in part during the season, and your scouts are there and have relationships and are talking to coaches. But coaches are going to gas up their guys for the most part, unless they know a guy's going to suck in the league and they're like, that guy does not have it, because they want to save their own reputations. So they might be like, yeah, you got to be really careful with that guy. We've had issues with him, or I don't think once he gets to the pros, he's going to be able to handle the money, or whatever coaches say to save their bacon and not just gas up all their guys. But for the most part, they're going to gas up their guys, because the best thing they can do is get guys drafted to help them in recruiting. But if you get a situation where you can verify information about who they are independently and experience who they are for yourself, why wouldn't you do that? That's exactly what the Commanders did yesterday. We'll wrap up the hour with a few more calls next. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Linnell will be with us coming up here in just a few minutes. The hot takes certainly going to be flying. We just kind of give him like an hour to cool off after he and Russell. I guess normally sometimes it's Windbag Wednesday. What do they call Thursdays? Throwdown Thursdays?
That I don't know.
They have the worst old married couple energy that I've ever heard on the radio.
Essek told me there's something in Real Things from the show.
Oh, yeah. Essek had just a banger of a one. I was listening for a little bit today. Sometimes I'll pop them on as I'm prepping. Sometimes I'll listen, obviously when I drive in or when I'm taking the train in on the free Odyssey app. But today I just was in the prep studio and I was like, I kind of sometimes hear yelling through the walls. And so I was like, let me turn the program on and turn on the show. And they were talking about, I don't remember what they were talking about, but Essek just dropped this really funny one-liner. And I literally ran into Matt's studio and I was like, that was funny. I don't remember what you said, but it was hilarious. And then he found the clip and was like, this is what I said. And I was like, that's the one I was talking about. And so then he pulled it because I told him I would use it in Real Things.
Okay, I need to find it.
Oh, he didn't pull it for you?
I guess he might have pulled it. I just got to go to his folder, I guess.
Okay. I think he did. I don't think he left that on you. But Linnell, probably a calmer version, will be in here in just a few minutes. That tends to be how that works. Never read the comments, speaking of chaos, coming up at 5:30 here on the Hoffman Show. Let's go back to the phones to wrap up the hour. 301-230-0980. Talking about whether or not the Commanders made a mistake in bringing in multiple quarterbacks to be together and get interviewed together. I think there were some individual portions, potentially including meetings with Josh Harris. But there was definitely a lot of a group dynamic that they had yesterday in Ashburn. Let's go to Al. Al, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, Craig? How you doing, man?
I'm great, Al. Appreciate you calling and holding through the commercial break there.
Oh, no problem, man. Hey, I'll say this. This is one of the greatest things the Commanders could have done is to bring that group in together and do it just like that. One thing people fail to remember and realize is that when you have a group of alpha males or alpha people together, you're going to see who's the real alpha in the group after a while. You're going to see who the real leader is. And in that instance, I call them the Omega Alpha, the last alpha. That's the last one standing, and he's that guy. In this instance, you got all of these personalities, these different things. It's great. Yeah, go out, bowl. Those things, competitive nature kicks in. Who's the competitor? Who wants to win? Who has that drive to win in something as simple as golf?
Right.
That's what I'm looking for. And the military does it too. They put the guys together and say, we're going to see who the leader is.
Totally.
We're going to find out who the leader is in a group of stuff. And to me, in like a pack of wolves, the same thing. All of them are wolves. All of them do their thing. But
Right.
at some point, there's going to be that one wolf that says, I'm in charge here.
Right. Totally. And it doesn't have to be in like a alpha male kind of way. Like, because there's some people that will fake that or will try to do that, and it's going to come off as corny or disingenuous or whatever. And there's going to be someone that emerges in a genuine way. And that's the one that you want. And like we were talking about earlier, Al, I don't know if you were tuned in for this part of the show. I don't care whether you're actually good at golf or not. I care whether you're willing to compete. I care whether you're willing to be like, I suck at golf, but let's go. Like, whatever. Let's do it. Like, Drake May's probably the best golfer of the bunch. Drake May's a sick athlete who's good at everything. But is Jaden Daniels willing to swing a club and even maybe laugh at himself, but it shows like a vulnerability that you need as a leader? Like, I care about that. That is alpha in the way that you need in the modern NFL.
Exactly. And that's the whole point of bringing a group of guys together, whether it be quarterbacks, tight ends, O-linemen, whatever. Let them be together. You're going to start seeing people's personalities come out, and you're going to start seeing competitive nature, especially in a game setting. Golf, playing bowling, pool, darts, anything. It's like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan competed at everything. Everything.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. As long as it was a sport and you could win, he wanted to win.
No, Michael Jordan is a competition addict. Like, I don't think, like, the level that Michael Jordan is competitive helped him be who he was as a basketball player and is terrible for Michael Jordan as a human being. Like, he's a literal addict when it comes to competition, which I know I say with a chuckle, but, like, I actually mean that in a way that is, there's a little bit of concern for Michael Jordan as he continues to get older and, you know, goes golfing and does all the things that he does. But he's got enough money that doesn't actually matter. Point is, like, but as a general manager of a football team, I want that guy who's going to lead my football team for sure. Al, it's a great call. Thanks so much, man. Let's wrap up the calls with Kevin. Kevin, thanks for holding. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Thanks for having me. This is going to go against the grain and sound Pollyannish, but why does everything have to be so self-interested and self-calculating? Well, you know, Washington needs to sell its organization, too, to these guys. They want, whoever they pick, they want them to come in and be excited to work for the organization. And what it sends to them is like, we consider you human beings. Just relax, have a good time. You're not commodities. The NFL has this image. It's all about billions of dollars and what these guys can do for our bottom line, and bring them in, let them have a good time, enjoy each other. They're going through a tough time. I mean, it's a nervous time. It improves Washington's image, I think, in the eyes of the players, in the eyes of the public, because it's like not everything's about what I'm getting from you. Here's our organization, what we're about, and what our locker room will be about. And that's where the benefit is, in my opinion, for Washington, for the Commanders. Not like which guy is the alpha male. It's more about what kind of organization is Washington, and what are they willing to do to make you comfortable to play for the Commanders. That's what strikes me as what the benefit is. And I don't understand all the criticism of it. You know,
I don't either, outside of people are not curious and they just think that the way that they heard things done once, or the things they think, the way that they think it is the way it should be done. Kevin, I think that's a really interesting point and a phenomenal call. Appreciate it. Glad we got to you here before the end of the hour. Because like, imagine this, Ant. Let's say in 3-4 years from now, all these guys are at something. I don't know what kind of draft class reunions they have, but like, they're at you got a couple of them that wind up working out and they're at the Pro Bowl, or they're at, here's probably the best chance. They're at the Super Bowl, right? They're hawking product. Maybe whoever's at Washington hopefully is coming off like a loss in the NFC Championship game, but they're out there. The other two guys are out there, and one of them's out there with the Bounty paper towels and's got that fancy green jacket that all those guys got this year, and someone else is out there with State Farm selling insurance, whatever, on Radio Row. And they get a chance to like catch up and like, hey, remember when we went on that visit to Washington? And they probably look at the one who got drafted by Washington and they're like, damn, I wish I was you. Not because Washington was second, but because of the kind of organization that they're trying to build here. And I think that's a good point, because I think to Ramala's point earlier, the caller who called in earlier and was like, you know, Jaden Daniels is a guy that just wants someone to believe in him. Okay, like that's fine. You can interview other people and then ultimately decide that you're the guy that we like and we believe in you and we're ready to make that investment. We just had to go through the process because it's not that we don't believe in you. It's that he could be worth believing in too. You can't have a scarcity mindset. And so ultimately, like, what kind of taste do you leave in the players' mouths? And I do think that is a test. I think that if there's a player that goes through playing top golf with some of their draft classmates at the end of a long process. Yesterday was the last day they could do 30 visits. These guys finally get a couple of days, hopefully, to chill, relax, and then they ultimately head to Detroit for the draft or wherever it is that they're going to spend draft day. And Washington kind of gave, like, yeah, they're stressful. You meet with the owner. I'm sure there were football meetings and stuff. But ultimately, like, they get to play top golf. Like, that's pretty sweet. Like, that's a good experience that Washington gave them. And I really, the more I think about it, like that point of, like, if you're Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, or Jaden Daniels, not just as a competitor, but as a person, not as a commodity, but as a human, and you leave Dulles Airport yesterday and head home, you're hoping that you get on, next time you're there, it's on Josh Harris's plane as a member of the Commanders. Like, I have no doubt in my mind. And if you leave without that, then, like, I don't think you're the right person to play for Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. And in some ways, it is kind of that simple. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. If you got any more thoughts, you can leave them when we post this on demand in the comments section on YouTube at Craig Hoffman or at the Team 980. Then we read them and never read the comments. And that's Thursdays at 5:30, which means coming up in 30 minutes, it's time for Never Read the Comments. Up next, Linnell pops in with some thoughts. Also, we haven't talked about the Jonte Porter situation, the NBA player suspended for life for gambling. Ryan Horvath from BetMGM, the network, is going to pop in studio with us before the national show tonight to discuss that at 6:30. We're loaded up on a Thursday, 1 week from the NFL draft, on your home for every pick, the Team 980. It's the Hoffman. If you're watching live on YouTube, you see what I see in front of me, which is an empty chair. And how do you show up late to your own guest appearance when you're in the building?
That is a question that I don't have an answer for, but I would love to be answered.
Did you see him out there? Didn't he agree to 5 o'clock? Let's see. Now I got a real fun time because now I got Ant there. He's gone. Then I got Linnell. See, nope, empty chair here. It truly is the Hoffman Show, boys and girls. I am out on an island on my own. I have no plan because I'm supposed to be talking to Linnell, and Ant is currently. Oh yeah, you come on. Are you gonna do the show? It's 5:04. We had talked about 5 o'clock. We're live on the radio, Linnell? Silence is discouraged. Are you
5:30 is what this text message says.
For yesterday.
Which so there was a change in time that was not
entirely
communicated.
Different day.
Oh, well, did you not respond to Ant? Now this becomes the Ant
doesn't,
Linnell.
It doesn't need to go on the radio. We're here and we're gonna do it, but that's not
okay. It might be on us. It might.
Oh, no, for sure it's on you. Well, 100%. But doesn't matter. We're here.
We're here. We got takes ready to go. You got things we want to talk about? That's cool. You want to know what? It probably is our fault.
Yes. For the fourth time.
Yeah.
It is 100% your fault. But no one's at fault because there isn't a fault. It's just radio. Not just radio. But you get what
we're streaming on the internet and everything. I fix your camera. Now you look beautiful.
Thank you.
Here for you. Now that you're here for us because
I'm going to get out of the shot for a hot second.
Okay. Linnell's dipping down. You're not fully out of the shot, so don't do anything too crazy. He's just going to get his whatever he needs to prepare the information.
Well, my phone's about to die, so.
Oh, okay. We can get that. All right. Let's do some radio.
Let's do some O-Ray.
Let's do some radio. You had some quarterback stuff that you want to talk about. But there was something else you wanted to burn on. / ask, discuss, talk about.
Yeah, and it's gaining more traction on our sister station, 106.7. Jordan Reed, ESPN NFL draft analyst, went on with the child star and the comedian, Grant Danny, and said that it is the worst kept secret in the draft that Washington intends to trade back up into round one. That was a quote from him. This is multiple times he's now come out and said that. He wrote it in the Insider piece that came out about 2 weeks ago or last week. Everything's jumbled together.
Yeah.
So that was what
flat circle. Good time.
Yeah. That's what we were discussing in the message threads, and I was kind of throwing the hypothetical out to you and Anthony about, and the fans, callers as well. Is there a price that's too steep to pay to move up for a tackle? If it is, and I have one guy circled in particular being Olu Fashanu.
He's the one that makes it interesting to me. So quickly to knock out some of the other names. Alt's gonna be gone. He's not an option. Fuaga is a right tackle at best, a right guard probably.
And you're probably not going to trade up for that position.
Correct. Right. J.C. Latham, same thing. Troy Fatanu, same thing. Some people think he can get all the way to left tackle, but he's probably a right tackle, and a lot of people like him inside. Graham Barton might have 4-position flexibility, but the one position that he's not going to play is left tackle.
And that's something.
There's some people that think that dude's going to be like an all-pro, like Hall of Famer if you put him in the right position in the right line. Like, he's really talented, but he's not a left tackle. Which leaves you with, by the way, are we going for Fashanu or Fashanu? I've now heard both from people that I really respect. I've been going Fashanu the last week.
You waited until a week before the draft?
Well, that's when I heard it. And it was like, I think Dane Brugler was the one that said Fashanu. And I was like, well, Dane knows more than everybody. So, well, whatever.
I've heard Fashanu. Fashanu is with the pronunciation.
You're our DC high schools guy. Do you have any Gonzaga intel on this?
It's Olu Fashanu.
Okay, we're going Fashanu. Then why didn't you correct me when I've been saying it wrong for a week?
We don't want any Syracuse on Syracuse crime here.
We can do it off air. We only murder you on the air.
I mean, everybody's been saying
Damn.
Fashanu. Everybody's been. I mean, I don't know.
Fashanu sounds like a
Anyway, okay, so
fashionista.
Olu Fashanu is what
Yeah.
we're going with. Okay, so Fashanu out of Penn State, tackle. He's a true left tackle. The other guys that I think are worth mentioning, though, are Tyler Guyton and Amarius Mims. And for those guys, the price isn't going to be as steep because you're going into the 20s.
Well, I think you
not-
got to go past. I think Pittsburgh at 20 is taking an offensive lineman.
I agree, but I tend to think one of the other guys who's an interior guy. Like,
You don't think they go?
we
tackle?
did our mock yesterday, Barton was the pick. So maybe, but because they need multiple things, they're more willing to take maybe the better or the more sure player who is inside.
BLA,
The
as I like
Commanders,
to call it, best lineman available.
yeah, the Commanders need a tackle. In fact, you can make an argument they need 2 tackles. So if that's the case, Guyton is athletic enough that he could potentially play left, but he's definitely a tackle. Fashanu is definitely a left tackle. And then you've got, who else was I? Oh, Amarius Mims, who's like the biggest wild card of them all. Only played in 8 games. Like, the tape is incredible, but it's super low. Like, if you think J.J. McCarthy didn't play a lot, boy, let me introduce you to Amarius Mims.
Who was the case? What prospect was it last year? Was it Dawan Jones or Broderick Jones or Broderick Jones that didn't play a lot last year and then ended up?
Well, DeJuan Jones wound up falling because of a bunch of character concerns. I think that his tape was kind of limited. I think it was DeJuan Jones, and he got with Bill Callahan in Cleveland and shows you what good coaching could do. Yeah. You get him in the right system, the right room, the right everything. So if you're telling me I have to give up, to answer your question, now that I've set the table in immaculate fashion, it wasn't so immaculate. If you tell me I have to give up both seconds for Fashanu, I'm not interested. I think that is too steep, considering there are still a bunch of questions about him. He's not a surefire, can't-miss prospect. And there are other high upside tackles available at 36 and 40, and all of the data suggests that taking multiple swings is better than putting all your eggs in one basket. But if you tell me that I can, if somehow he falls into the mid 20s and I can give up 36 and even 78, nevertheless 36 and 100, then I'm down.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. No one's a can't-miss prospect, so I wouldn't let that, color why I wouldn't do it. I think.
Well, it's different than if you're trading up for like Marvin Harrison. Like Marvin Harrison is pretty can't miss.
I hear what you're saying, but no one's can't miss.
Sure, but it's percentages.
Right.
Not to get too bogged down in this argument, but like the percentage, Marvin Harrison is a 98% gonna work out prospect, right? Versus, let's say Fashanu is a 60-40 proposition and Patrick Paul's a 40-60. Like it comes down to how much risk are you willing to tolerate.
Yes.
And by the way, I pulled those numbers out of thin air. Those aren't real actual numbers.
Of course not. But with Fashanu, it's weird. Like, we always talk about prospect fatigue with quarterbacks. There's prospect fatigue with Fashanu, I feel like, because this time last year, he was considered the number 1 overall pick. Like, he was.
Oh, he wasn't the number 1 overall pick because Caleb was the number 1 overall pick. Caleb's been the number 1 overall pick for 4 years.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but he was the consensus best offensive lineman, the consensus top 3 player in the draft, if you're not going to give him one. But like most mocks from this time last year or right after the draft had finished had him as the best player in the draft. So I don't know what his...
Well, he played another season, and the tape wasn't as clean as people wanted it. And some of it is nitpicking for sure, but there are some things that people didn't like on tape, certain games where he got beat a little more than people are comfortable with for a top lineman. There's some technique things, which is interesting. So we had Mike Golick Jr., on, and he really liked the way that Fashanu played. And Logan was like, I don't like the way that he played. So that might tell me it's just a coaching thing at Penn State. And if you get him with a different line coach and you make his hips do something different in his set, then some of the tightness that like Logan sees in his hips and his ankles that kills some of the movement skill because he tested like a monster.
Yeah.
That stuff will go away with good coaching. And like that's the game, right? The game is what is he now? What have we seen and what can we turn him into?
I think they have a really good opportunity to talk about Washington to leave with a franchise quarterback and a franchise left tackle. I think that should be, no matter what else happens in this draft, for you to be in year one of a rebuild and to not have those two things filled, to leave the draft with those filled, I would consider your draft a plus no matter what happens with the rest of the picks, which would give me a little bit more leniency to maybe overpay if I really like Fashanu. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. Scouts can have their opinion. We can have our opinion. But if they say, hey, this is our franchise left tackle, I wouldn't be adverse to going up and paying whatever to get him. I think.
So you would give up 36 and 40.
If it means to get Olu Fashanu, I would think so. I think to me at least, I think he's there's a big enough gap between him and Guyton, for example, to where I would be okay doing it. Obviously, you have other needs. Receiver, edge rusher,
corner,
all
of which could be potentially available at 36 and 40. And by the way, you'll have a pick of left tackles available then, or a pick of tackles. Now, different caliber. Depends on what you think of Fashanu.
Mm-hmm.
But different caliber. But they'll have guys available.
And this is just where I differ at when it comes to corner and how pressing of a need it is. Because of the resources that you've spent at that position in last year's draft and then a couple of years ago in the draft, I don't think you really – I want to see them get coached. I want to see the guys that struggled last year get coached. So in terms of like how I would rank my needs, tackle is the biggest need of them all outside of quarterback. And then I would probably say – you know how I feel about the receiver thing. I think receiver, I would probably go tackle, receiver, edge, corner.
Let's dive into those rankings next. I think I want to talk through that because I don't know that I disagree with you, but I truly don't know. So I want to talk through it because there's also a best player available versus need argument that I think is going to come up at those picks as well. Talking about the Commanders' second round prospects, not the players, but kind of what they have in store for them next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. That's Linnell Willingham in for the half hour here. So your positional need rankings. We're taking quarterback off the board, right? That's number one, and it's going to be addressed at number two. But past that, what do you have?
Tackle.
Okay.
Now,
I think
when
I 100% agree with that.
When I go tackle, I put left and right in the same boat. I think they're both as pressing of a need as the other.
I think left's a little more pressing. Like Andrew Wiley's like somewhere between the 15th and 20th best tackle in the league, which means you can definitely upgrade there. Cornelius Lucas is a swing tackle. I
like Corn Lucas. I don't know what it is.
Because he gets to play in small sample sizes.
You know what's colored my opinion of him is 2021. Or is it 2021?
If it's long enough ago that you can't really remember when it is.
It shows you
But
what
like,
it is.
I heard Kime say something on his pod that I thought was really like clarifying on Corn, because I also agree. Like when I watch him, I like him. He's hit free agency how many times and no one signed him? It tells you something.
Maybe his agency's not smart and asking for money based off of his playing time. But left tackle, I think, is massive. There's a bite, and I don't know if you guys have gotten to it today. There's a bite from today where Adam talked about tackle. I haven't gotten around to hear it. We were literally playing it on Chris Russell's show, and then we stopped it right before that. So I would love to know. He said that at the owners' meetings, but I thought it was in a very facetious way that he was okay with Trent Scott and Corn Lucas. No, you're not, Adam Peters.
Of course he says that, because what else is he going to say?
He did see them play up close, and Trent Scott played his tail off in that San Francisco game where he started. So I don't know if that colors it or not, but left tackle and right tackle, both the tackles, huge need for me. Then right after that, I would say that the need to get another playmaker on the perimeter, wide receiver more specifically, is like where I would be going. I think when you have a young quarterback, you got to surround him with weapons. And we've had this conversation before. Our guy, Matt Harmon of Reception Perception, is hell-bent on the Jahan Dotson bounce back this year. All the numbers say that he potentially could have a bounce back, but it's not something I'd be comfortable banking on. So I would be, really emphasizing adding another receiver at 36 or 40. And I think in terms of what's going to be BPA, I think it's going to end up being wide receiver, because I think there's just more in terms of that position versus the tackles and the corners. But after receiver, I would probably go edge rusher, and then I would go corner. Now, edge and corner fall behind tackle and receiver for me for a couple of different reasons. They gave Dorrance Armstrong a pretty hefty contract. Do you disagree with that?
No, I mean, they gave him you might start, but we can put someone ahead of you contract. Like, you're probably going to start.
If you're paying a reserve that much money, bad asset management.
He's not, I mean, it's not so long and so rich that you can't go sign up. Like, if they had gotten in the Brian Burns game, Dorrance Armstrong could have been popped down a notch of the depth chart.
For sure.
But they paid him starter's money.
They have high
but they paid him like second starter money.
Right. And they have,
I guess that's what I'm saying.
I think you put it well. Second starter is probably the best way to put it. I like what they did in free agency at edge between Cleveland, Dorrance, and Fowler.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like, and I'm missing someone almost, it feels like, too.
They definitely brought in one more, and I'm totally blanking on
it. Yeah, I'm blanking on it, too. But I also,
you bring in 28 players.
Exactly. I also look at the idea of them situationally using Luvu as an edge, as well as Jamin.
So we're on the same page there.
As an
edge.
Like, I don't think edge is a screaming need, but if the BPA is edge, then I wouldn't be mad.
So here's the problem with edge and corner, just to cut to the chase here. And this is why both of them are high on my list. And like, the gap is bigger between what's after those two than it is what's above them, right? Like, quarterback's in its own category.
Yeah.
But I think like receiver, tackle, or tackles then like kind of in tier 2 need. And then tier 3 is receiver, corner, edge all together. Because you have players there that if you start the season tomorrow, you're in good shape. But you could definitely upgrade and add depth. I think what's interesting though is when you start to look long term, like at corner, all of a sudden it starts to rise because Benjamin St-Juste is a free agent after the season. So whether he works out or not, you're either out Benjamin St-Juste or you got to pay Benjamin St-Juste. And depending on how he does, might inform that situation. And so when you think about that versus corner or versus edge, where you have Armstrong now long term, And you have the guys that you drafted last year in KJ Henry and Andre Jones, and you'll certainly add someone this year.
Back.
Sure. Is he?
Yeah.
Or did they cut him?
He got reinstated today. He was not cut. So
okay. Well, he hasn't been cut yet. But maybe he is a guy. Like, I think that when you look at that and the depth and all of those things, like we're talking about long-term planning. And sometimes I feel like when we look at needs, we look at just in 2024. And I think looking beyond for guys that'll be on 4-year, very affordable contracts is the better way to look at it, which is why corner to me is an elevated thing. And also, by the way, depending on what they think of BSJ, like that might be a lot higher on their list because we just straight up don't know. But they brought in a bunch of intriguing guys that have some ball production and do some things, and I just don't know what to make of any of that.
I don't know how much you guys have discussed one of their more under-the-radar free agent signings. Michael Davis has
he's one of the guys I'm talking about.
Really good football on tape.
Yeah.
He's been like good 1 year, bad 1 year, good another. And I don't know if that's with LA's changing coaching staff or whatever, but he's put good tape out there, and I believe he's an undrafted guy. I just like undrafted guys that have been able to make themselves stick in the league because it shows a sense of work ethic and hunger and determination and having overcome adversity and beating the odds and all that. I love that.
Yeah, by the way, they brought back F.A. That's the guy we couldn't think of.
I love me some F.A. Obata.
Who doesn't love F.A. Obata?
I love F.A. Obata.
Right.
But, I'm excited to see what Michael Davis is going to potentially do as well. I also look at, and I'm blanking on
I have the depth chart in front of me. What are we looking?
The special teams guy that they brought in, that people are saying is just a special teams guy. I wonder.
Noah Igbenegbu.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a tough pronunciation, but he's that
Igbenegbu.
He's that like big corner that like they covered in Dallas's defense and the Joe Witt's defense. So I'm wondering if he's just a camp body or if he have the opportunity to stick long term. I don't know. I'm more so looking at the secondary as a whole. If they don't add anybody, I think they will be marginally better because the coaching is going to be that much better. And that's really been my whole thing with the secondary and why I wouldn't be in such a hurry to invest prime resources at that spot because you want your coaches to see what you got.
This gets into the question, though, that I think that we have kind of run into and why we do the mock drafts is you get to 36 a lot and the best player available on a lot of boards is going to be a corner. It's going to be an Ennis Rakestraw. It's going to be a Mike Sanders still. It's going to be pick your flavor of corner. And so there are going to be some receivers there, but like if Ladd McConkey and Ricky Pearsall and some of those guys, depending on how you have them ranked, like if they go in the late first, early second, and those first 4 picks of the second before Washington, or first 3 picks of the second before Washington, seems to be where Ladd McConkey goes in every freaking mock draft. And I'm like, am I going to get no? That is the kind of thing that you are looking at is all of a sudden, are you looking at a wide receiver tier that's empty, an edge tier that's empty, a tackle tier that's empty, and a corner tier that's got 1 or 2 players, especially if some of those other tiers are empty, does a Kool-Aid McKinstry fall into the second round? At which point you go, well, that's the best player available. Like he's a tier 2 player for us and everyone else is tier 3. That's when the idea of best player available versus fit, and we've talked about this. We probably should do a refresher on it next week. Like it's a good yearly radio segment, but it's not actually how it works. The board isn't linear, right? The board is done in tiers. But if you have a tier 2 player and everyone else is in tier 3, even if it's not a position of need, you've decided that player is so much better than everyone else that basically, unless it's a quarterback, that's its own category, you take that guy. And I think that's the question you're going to run into for Washington with corner, because I think on tiers being even, you probably go with the other positions. But if you got a guy that's bumped up a tier because someone else fell, then that's the situation you're looking at. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. You got overtime tonight?
I do have overtime.
All right. Well, go rest up. Overtime starting in a little over an hour over on 106.7 The Fan with Linnell. When we get back, we will read the comments, even though they told us to never do it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. At 6 o'clock, you will hear from Commanders General Manager Adam Peters. Again, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, yes, I did change my shirt in the break. I was sick of the collared shirt, Ant. I know you pull it off. You got the polo. Looks good for you. I didn't like the way it looked. New half of the show, second half of the show, new me. I'm back in a t-shirt. It's more comfortable.
I mean, I have to wear these all day, every day, so
yeah,
sort of kind of get used to it.
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't working for me. I don't know whether it was the like. It looks good in person.
Mm-hmm.
Sharp, professional. Look dorky on camera. I know if someone thinks that.
Do I look dorky then?
No.
Oh.
You just look like you. I think it's also because I never wear collars.
Oh, okay.
And you do.
Yeah.
So people are used to it's like, oh, that looks like Anthony. And then I don't know what they're saying about me. Actually I do, because they leave comments. And sometimes we read them.
We tried to warn them. They didn't listen.
Yeah!
Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
We cut up the show into on-demand segments for you, which we air on YouTube at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman. You leave your comments, we read them, then you leave comments on that. And then the next week, you get the point. It's Never Read the Comments. Anthony, brought to you by
Nobody.
But if you want to, shoot us an email or something. All right, let's get into it. Starting with our mock draft reaction, and specifically the debate around whether Washington should trade up for a tackle. So we, last Friday, did a mock draft where we did a 3-round mock draft where we picked just for the Commanders. And then we did kind of an alternate scenario where we redid the first part of the draft and we did trade up. And so let's read some of the old feedback off of that. I think if they can move back into round 1 to get Mims, that would be worth it just because the upside is so high. I'm not sure they would move for any of the others. I think getting someone like Paul with 36 or 40 would be a good option as well. That to me is kind of where I'm at. Lefty Costa, 1899. Get the older left tackle from Green Bay. I know he has an injury history, but hopefully he can get the job done while we train a new draftee. David Bakhtiari. I think that is an interesting one. Scott says, if Fashanu or Mims is available at 18, I say pull the trigger, but we'll just have to wait and see. I'm down for whatever AP, DQ, Josh Harris company wants to do. I'm here for it. We haven't won in 32 years. LFG, HTTC. Those are the two that I think are interesting. I think Fashanu is the higher graded prospect on most people's boards, which means you're probably going to have to trade up farther to get him. But is it worth just waiting and giving up less for Mims because he could wind up being the better player? And to me, the best case scenario, the most likely scenario for Washington to ultimately trade up is Mims at like 20, if somehow he gets past Dallas. And now we're talking about trading up to 25, 26, where you're not having to give up third and a fourth, right? You're maybe giving up, second and a third. Certainly not 2 seconds. But if you can get to where you're giving up a second, a fifth, and a sixth, right? So maybe it's 3 for 2 and you get 28 and I don't know what the Bills are at 28 or the Bucks at 26. And their fourth rounder. And you go 3 for 2 and you give up a 2, a 5, and a 6 for a 1 and a 4. Or a 1 and, maybe their fifth or something. I don't know. I don't know what the picks are because I don't have the Bucks picks in front of me. But it looks something like that, and you don't have to give up another top 100 pick. That is, to me, when it's 100% worth it. If you can get Mims, and frankly, if you can get Guyton at that point, I would heavily consider it. You have to kind of look at the board and say, hey, is he going to go here? Because there's other teams that might aggressively be looking to trade back in. Just does a Carolina who's got 33 and 39 say, like, we can give up a 5th or a 6th to go up 3 or 4 spots and go get a tackle. They're actually more set on the O-line than they probably are anywhere else. But, like, there are teams that could be doing what, like, just because Washington's talking about doing it doesn't mean they're not going to have competition, I guess is the point. So I think that if you can get Guyton late 20s, Mims mid 20s, Fashanu early 20s, then it becomes a no-brainer. If you have to think about it real hard, it's probably not worth it. Williams says on Mock Draft 3.0, seems like a pattern is forming that 9 to 12 tackles will go before we pick at 36. Trading up for Mims if he hits 21 plus is probably a good move. Contrarily, cornerbacks and wide receivers will likely fall a bit, making that left tackle choice really costly. Kool-Aid McKinstry and Troy Franklin and A.D. Mitchell could very well be available at 36, 40 and no viable tackles. I'd be ecstatic with McKinstry and Franklin / Mitchell / Leggett, but the fan base might revolt. Another option is to trade next year's first for a late first to get Mims and keep both seconds if this year's draft is particularly strong. I will say this. I agree with a lot of what Williams said. I hate the last part. Hate it. Do not trade your future first-round pick. You could be really bad this year. Hopefully not. Hopefully they're better than they were last year off coaching alone. Nevertheless, the fact that I think their talent defensively is significantly better across the board. Offensively, I think they've gotten better on the O-line. Like, we'll see. It's all going to come down to quarterback play and game planning, play calling. But there is one of the things that we talked about earlier in the week with Alec Lewis from The Athletic is that teams undervalue future picks. If anything, like, trade a second, trade 36 for someone's future first. Don't trade your future first. That is a terrible, terrible idea. Paul Sherman, 184. Read this. I'm going to read this comment non-snarkily just to make a quick point for anybody that may be looking at these drafts. The trade that we made, Ant, for the Vikings trading up, not to mention some others. Trade seems awful light based off past deals. It seems like when trade scenarios with us moving, it costs much more for one spot. What did we give up for the move for RG3? One thing that I will note is we can only trade 2 years into the future, or 1 year into the future, 24 and 25, on PFF Simulator, which is the one that we use. So sometimes we make a deal and we just kind of say, hey, there's probably a 2025 or 2026 pick in here, and we can't actually include it, but their simulator allows us to do it. And it's really about the picks that we're actually going to make in that mock. So when I'm trading, like, I don't really care about future first in terms of the simulator because we're not going to simulate next year's draft. As long as we can get through whether it's a 1, a 2, or a 3-round mock with the picks in the right places, that's all I care about in terms of what we do when doing these mock drafts live on the radio. We don't have time to get out the calculator, consult the GM, etc. As for the RG3 part of this, though, and like, okay, well, what about the actual trades when we're talking about these high picks? When you move up in the top 3, top 5, it's way more expensive. It's about how far you move and how high you're going. The higher you get, the more expensive the price. So yes, Washington gave up as a base 3 first-rounders plus some other stuff. And that's because they were going to the number 2 pick. If Minnesota wants to get to number 2 to take whoever ahead of Washington in terms of quarterback, and Adam Peters said today that they're probably not doing this, but just hypothetically, it starts with 11, 23 this year, 25 in their first rounder next year, and then it's what do you get on top of that? So yeah, some of these trades that we simulate might be a little light. Some of these trades that are discussed might feel a little light, but it's if you're comparing it to a second pick versus, say, when Anthony traded up to number 5 in Mock Draft 3.0 for the Chargers, and at number 5, you might not have to give up 3 first-rounders. You might be able to get away with 2 plus a first. Plus a future second or whatever we ultimately wound up doing. Let's see. What else do we got in this week's edition of Never Read the Comments? Some definitely interesting comments on our segment from last week, and talking about Drake May versus J.J. McCarthy and the quarterback archetypes. I was surprised. Remember, we termed it as Justin Herbert light or Kirk Cousins plus. Which do you think got more votes?
Justin Herbert.
That's what I thought was going to happen. people were pleasantly surprising.
Oh, so we got a lot of secret Kirk fans out there?
I think people just realized the question.
Oh.
Now, of course, it depends on what you actually think of Drake May versus J.J. McCarthy. But, Bruin Ranger 13, absolutely Cousins plus. I'm definitely down with J.J. Resonant Freck, whatever that means. 528, definitely Cousins plus. Raymond Smith, give me Kirk plus all day. Kirk Cousins plus is a dream QB. Like, that is what you want, right? Is you want a guy with great processing ability, but maybe a little bit more athleticism, a little bit more toughness. Now, this is where it gets fun, though, because people's answer probably changes depending on who they think that we're talking about. Mr. Thud 03, give me Cousins plus if we're talking from pure football ability standpoint, then give me Kirk plus. He's consistently a top 10 QB. If Jaden turns out to be a baller and a gamer, especially in big-time moments, that's even better. And then someone responds, they're talking about J.J. McCarthy, not Daniels. How do you think JD is Cousins plus? I'm not even the biggest fan of JJ, but that's clearly who they're referring to. And then the original person's like, for the record, I misunderstood and thought they were telling about Jaden Daniels. However, if they're asking me, do I want Justin Herbert light or Kirk Cousins plus, I'll take Kirk Cousins plus. Doesn't mean that I think they're alike. So either way, all the QBs, whichever we pick, I prefer Kirk plus. So literally everyone was pretty much like, I want Kirk plus, which is the right answer, by the way. Now, the question that, of course, Adam Peters has to answer is J.J. McCarthy actually Kirk plus, and is Drake May actually Justin Herbert light? Like, I can't remember who the analyst even was at this point that suggested those things. Or is Drake May like Justin Herbert light in some areas, but way better in others, his creative playmaking and things like that? And is J.J. McCarthy not as sharp as Kirk is from a decision-making standpoint? And thus, yes, he's got a little bit better arm and more athleticism, but he's not actually that guy. And that's on Peters and the scouts to ultimately to figure out, you know?
Nah, for sure.
All right, what else do we got? Again, you can leave your comments at Craig Hoffman. This one was just funny to me. Carlos comments, one thing that's happened a lot, Ant, is we're producing more shorts from the show. So on YouTube, it's kind of like Reels or TikTok. The short vertical videos, 60 seconds long, and we're producing more of those for the show at Craig Hoffman, which is great because a lot of new people are finding the content. And it's just that sometimes people think they know everything about what we say on the show from a 60-second short. You can imagine that goes exactly as planned at all times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So literally yesterday, no, I take that back. 1 hour ago.
Oh, wow.
Carlos Allen, 4616. You see, this is going back to the short we made off of Kurt Warner being on the show, or being on Sheehan's show, and then me reacting and kind of talking about some of what Kurt said about Jaden Daniels. You seem to find every reason to not pick JD. You rarely highlight negatives from your pick, May. Just say that's your guy and not try to make it seem like you're impartial. Anthony, we did mock draft 3.0 yesterday. I picked for the Commanders. Who did I pick?
Jaden Daniels.
Why do people do this to themselves?
I don't know. Isn't also that real from like weeks ago?
The algorithm, man. It's a weird place.
Yeah.
That algorithm. Also, in the I can't believe they said this on the internet. Thank God they don't use the real name department. This one cracked me up quite a bit. King Dre 1017 on our interview with Mark Ross, the former Giants executive who's now with the NFL Network, who had very interesting thoughts on this quarterback discussion. He goes, talking to a guy that's in the same division won't give their honest opinion. He spelled there wrong. Used the wrong one. Won't give their honest opinion on who we should take because they don't want us to kick their ass 2 times a year. He doesn't work there anymore, King Dre. He works at a television network. They probably fired him, in fact, because that's how most executives wind up not being with clubs anymore. The internet's a wild place, Ant.
It's a zoo. It is a zoo.
It is a wild, wild place. This is a little bit of a long comment, but I thought it was really interesting because Ross about Daniels. He made his whole like theory of the case was essentially that quarterbacks are the best guy. Like the quarterbacks that work out in the NFL are the best guys on the field, and it's obvious. Like you don't overthink it. You get in trouble when all of a sudden you convince yourself Mitch Trubisky is the number 2 pick. Because like, when was Mitch Trubisky ever that great in college? And his thing with Jaden Daniels is like, watch the tape in 2023, and that dude is the best player, which is why he won the Heisman Trophy. The stats are amazing and all of that stuff. And when he says it with a conviction that you're like, damn, that is convincing. That is compelling. Well, Alicia Fisher, 4889, says, wholeheartedly disagree with the point about good quarterbacks having been good quarterbacks their whole life. Compared to the public average of what a normal person trying to play quarterback compared to college NFL players, of course, they're always going to be better. But there are so many prospects that have been projects that worked out and a lot of good college QBs that haven't. Just to name a few in the last few years that were quote-unquote good, safe prospects. Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Trubisky, Mac Jones, etc. QBs from those drafts that were projects and taken later in their respective drafts were Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love. Even Tom Brady was a project 6th-round pick, and Aaron Rodgers was a late 1st-round pick because he was a developmental prospect, and the Niners took Alex Smith instead. No disrespect, but Mark Ross was blessed being around a franchise who was chosen by a Manning brother and Eli, who was a good college QB who won in big moments, and the NFL was different back then. Prospects are not a guaranteed thing. You take the guys that fit and have a ceiling. You are aiming high for football play, not just the guy who is a good college QB who is safe. Now, I would point out that a guy like Lamar Jackson probably proves Mark's point more than disproves it. He was a interesting, to think about NFL prospect. But Ant, you were at Cuse when Lamar was there. Were you at that game in the Dome?
I was indeed. I saw him. I was in the end zone where he hurdled my guy, Deli Dub Zero.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I remember watching that game on TV being like, that's the best football player I've ever seen in my whole life.
It was crazy.
Well, that was Lamar Jackson's coming out party. It was a Friday night at the then Carrier Dome against Syracuse. And Lamar in college was the best player on the field all the time. Patrick Mahomes was the best player on the field. And I think that is Mark's point, is that sometimes guys that become questionable prospects for whatever reason were the best player in college, and we find excuses to say that they weren't actually that, right? That Mahomes, he's a crazy man, wild man. And he is. But he's also the best player. His stats were insane. So, what my question would be then is when you look at Drake May often was the best player on the field. The problem is it's an 11-man game, and the other 10 that he was playing with were not very good. Where Jaden was often the best player on the field, and that was enhanced by the fact that and now people are going to get mad and think I'm hating on Jaden again, but this is kind of the point. Jaden was simultaneously often the best player on the field. If he wasn't, it was Malik Neighbors, who he had to get the ball to and did so expertly. And the stats and the numbers and everything that becomes an easier evaluation shows it because the production is there. And I guess that's kind of the point, is somewhere in between this comment and what Ross said, there is a truth that production isn't everything, that there is projection involved here. And the idea that you can just be who's the best player in college is oversimplifying it. I think Mark's point was really interesting. I just don't fully agree with it when you look at someone like a Josh Allen, who's a sub 60% completion guy at Wyoming and still turned out to be one of the best 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. So clearly there's more to it. And I also think the part that puzzled me the most about that interview, and I think Mark's a smart guy. I'd have him on again. But I'd asked him about kind of the nature-nurture thing. And he was basically like, I think the guys are going to bust. The guys who are going to bust are going to bust. The guys who are going to be good are going to be good. And the guys who are going to be in the middle are going to be in the middle. I just don't think that's true. I think that you can win with and get really good production out of guys who would otherwise not go anywhere in the league based off the circumstances. I don't think Brock Purdy is Brock Purdy at 28 of the 32 NFL franchises. He went to the right one, and he's going to be a Pro Bowler for the next decade, possibly. Meanwhile, if like Andrew Luck was scheme-proof, Peyton was scheme-proof, and Cam was to an extent scheme-proof for a while, but like after watching what they did with the quarterbacks here the last 4 years, what if Cam had went to not Ron Rivera in Carolina? Would he have won multiple MVPs? Like, did we see one of the, if we play Cam's career 10 times, did you see the second or third worst version of it? Like, circumstances matter a lot, how you set people up to succeed. Allowing Josh Allen, like if Josh Allen goes somewhere where he's given the keys to the car immediately, he would have crashed. Instead, he was like, there was someone next to him doing the student driver brake deal. And that allowed him to ultimately be the point where he can drive a Ferrari and put up some pretty good lap times. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. That is never read the comments. You can leave yours where we do, in fact, read them at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980 on all of our on-demand content. Coming up next at 6 p.m., Adam Peters spoke to the media earlier today. His pre-draft press conference you'll hear from the Commanders GM. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. 1 week from today, I will be with you from Detroit, Michigan, where the 2024 NFL Draft will be just about 2 hours away. Chicago Bears on the clock. Speaking of Chicago, my guy Danny Parkins will join me on set in Chicago for a couple of segments. So I think B. Mitch is going to be out there. Santana's going to be out there. We're going to see if we can have them swing by, B. Mitch for sure, before they head out to do their thing for the Commanders' digital channels. So it's going to be a really fun couple days in Detroit, or not even a couple days, really fun day in Detroit. I'm coming back on Friday. I'll be back in D.C. on Friday ahead of the second round. Of course, taking you into it. Every pick for the Commanders is right here on the Team 980. Grant and Danny will be leading our coverage on Thursday night, simulcast on 106.7 The Fan. Then Friday night, Sheehan and Denton, and then Linnell and Denton for the back end of it, the third round. And then on Saturday, we have full coverage as well, live and local for you here on the Team 980. Now, today, ahead of all of that drafting, Adam Peters did his pre-draft press conference, the Commanders GM, doing this for the first time. He did it with Lance Newmark, the assistant general manager. You'll hear from Peters mostly here, though. And obviously the biggest pressing question is, hey, what are you guys going to do at number 2? And do you know what you're going to do at number 2? Here was Adam Peters earlier today.
Yeah, we're real close. There's still a few more things in the process we have to do, and as you guys may be getting, I'm pretty process-driven, process-oriented. So we have to debrief on our 30 visits with the whole staff, talk about everybody there. That we haven't done that yet, and then later tonight we have a medical meeting as well to go over all the medicals in the combine and get that information as well, and just ask pointed questions if there are any. On certain players if we have some questions on that. So we have a few more things. DQ and I will huddle up and probably have an answer really sometime next week. Now, I will say this also, you don't really need to make a decision until you need to make a decision. So there's no rush with that, but I think we'll have a pretty good idea what we're doing early next week.
I love that that end there, as much as it drives people crazy. We don't have to make a decision until we have to make a decision. Yeah, that's kind of how this works. And again, like the pressure from fans is, and from the media to the extent that there is pressure from either, is like we all want to know. And because we don't have the chance to do these interviews or look at the medicals, and we're not in daily meetings about it, like we feel like we've made up our mind because there's no new information for us to get. For them, as you just heard, they're still collecting information. What if they're peeling through the medical charts next week and they're like, oh, there's something we don't like here? Like, that is the reality of what they're going through in these final preparations. And again, quarterback evaluation is really, really hard. And that is a reality that Adam Peters has certainly wrestled with.
Oh, wow. I don't know if we've improved at it. If you look at the 21 draft, right, which I was a part of in that one too, and that was you're seeing that there wasn't a ton of success at the top end of that draft based on so far. There's all those guys' stories are yet to be written, so it is hard and it's really hard. But you try to learn from all those things that as you go along. I've been in this 20. We've both been in this 20 plus years. So we have a lot of experience, both good and bad. You probably learn a little bit more from your bad experiences and from your good experiences, but you try to bank all those experiences and everything you learn and help you make the best decision the next time. But just like anything, I think we talked about it, maybe it was at the combine, but it's a lot easier to evaluate a defensive end than it is a quarterback, because it's, there's so many other things that go into a quarterback than just what you see on the tape. And that's really the core of it, is just there's so many different variables within a quarterback, what he has to do on the field each and every day and what he has to do every day in preparation to get there. I'm not minimizing defensive ends by any means. I was one. But it's a little more simple in terms of the evaluation process.
That's something that I think I've learned a lot about over these last couple of years working with Logan, is some positions are just not that hard and some are damn near impossible. Offensive tackle is a pretty straightforward evaluation. Like I won't say there's like a minimum body type, but like arm length and stuff like that. Like if a dude's got 31-inch arms, like he's probably not playing tackle in the NFL. Like his feet would have to be so incredibly good, and every other aspect of his game would have to be so good to overcome the fact that he just doesn't have the length to keep guys off of him in space and guard and protect and pass pro and reach in run blocking these big, long physical athletes that play on the edges in the NFL. And then you also have every single snap did he win, did he not? So if a guy, even at Marius Mims, he played 8 games. If you had 8 games of quarterback play, that would be like insanely hard to evaluate. J.J. McCarthy's got 2 years worth, and people are like, there's not enough throws here. Because on every single play, your left tackle, I guess if you're Oregon's left tackle and they run the amount of screens they do, and they run 70% of them to not your side, yeah, okay, that maybe in that case there's not as much to evaluate. But even then, like, what do you do on the backside of your screen? Do you seal the way you're supposed to? Like, there is a thing to evaluate on every single play if you're an offensive tackle. It's one of the reasons it is, along with the body type, kind of prototypes that exist, one of the easier positions to evaluate. Defensive end, like, do you get after the pass rusher? How is your pressure percentage? Do you turn those into sacks? What does the tape say in terms of how you get your sacks? Do you constantly win and create sacks, or did you have a 10-sack season because you got lucky because quarterbacks rolled into you? And actually, the pressure percentage of the defensive end opposite you is the indicator that guy's actually the better player. So defensive end, not that complicated. Corners really hard because how often does the ball come your way, and what do you do when it gets there? Why is the ball not coming your way? Is it because you're constantly shutting stuff down? Or is it because, the guy who plays on the other side of you is terrible? Like if you're Kenyon Mitchell this year out of Toledo and you're the best corner in the draft, you were playing at Toledo and you were the best corner that's coming out in the NFL draft. You think they were throwing at you a ton? No, which makes it hard to evaluate. But you have to go based off what you see. Quarterback, there's seemingly an endless amount of variables and no set guidelines of what works and what doesn't. Even amongst the set guidelines of height and weight, etc., there are exceptions. So what does Adam Peters and Lance Newmark, the assistant GM, what do they look at besides the tape to evaluate a quarterback?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. And I think there's a lot of different things. I think one is leadership. And if you're talking about just off the field, and leadership can be on the field, a lot of times things blend together too on and off the field when you're talking about intelligence and everything else and processing and everything like that. But I think leadership and people can lead in different ways, and the best way you lead is how you are, how you lead. Like how you lead might be different than how Ben leads, and so on and so forth. But being yourself and leading in your own way, and that's by doing things the right way, working, coming in early, staying late, challenging your teammates, but in the right way because you've earned their trust, because they respect you, because they have your back and you have their back, and that you've put in the work. So if I were to point to maybe one thing that we're not talking about that's something that's tangible on the field, I would say that.
Yeah, I would say there are some core traits I think that, obviously the film, and then the core traits of work ethic. There's the great quarterbacks I've been around have tremendous inner belief in themselves, and I think the more you're around a person, the more you feel that and see that in them, and I would say the ability to unify people and create a common belief, but that core belief in themselves has always been something that I've seen and been a part of, and seen that translate to success.
It's so interesting hearing that after the day that I had yesterday going to ESA and having the back and forth that I did with Michael Winger and Will Dawkins about Jordan Poole. And you might be going, wait, what? But they talked yesterday about, and this is the cool thing about like where I sit right now in sports media as someone who does multiple sports, as opposed to like, if you just cover the Commanders every day, like, sure, you have other things that you can reference. And like, Fortier, I think, does a great job sometimes of like leaning on his baseball background and his time spent that. Or, obviously John has this tremendously rich history to compare to for Washington football, and Nikki's covered other teams, and Ben does this, I think, really well, Standig, because he's covered everything in town. But I was doing Wizards yesterday, and we're doing Commanders press conference today, and the cross section of what makes an athlete great. There are things that in every sport are constants. And not that Jordan Poole is a great player, but the reason that Jordan Poole got back to being a really productive player by the end of the season is because he put his head down and did the work, and he had the self-belief. And I think of the guys who are really successful quarterbacks and that I've covered, and Kirk Cousins and Alex Smith are the two most successful in terms of winning that I have covered, and that is how they are. Like, Alex was incredibly he didn't need the coaching. Like, obviously, he took coaching and was open to coaching, but he didn't need it to get himself going. Kirk Cousins famously schedules every 15-minute block of his day. And so the regiment, the organization, the self-starting nature of a quarterback is really, really important. And it's, by the way, one of the reasons why I'm super high. Like, my biggest pro of Jaden Daniels is that's who that kid is. His work ethic caused LSU to change their policies around how long players were allowed to be in the building. Jaden Daniels went from throwing 18 touchdowns or whatever it was in 2022, 17 I think it was, to 40 and winning the Heisman, not because he and Brian Kelly got together because Kelly was like, you better be on the field at 5 a.m. every day. No, because Jaden Daniels lived in VR goggles in the offseason and got so many mental reps that he just got better. And so that is the kind of thing that you're looking for. And I've heard similar things about May. I've heard similar things about McCarthy. But ultimately, that is the kind of stuff that you're looking for off the field. You do need to see accuracy and footwork and timing and pocket feel and all those things. But are you someone who has the quarterback id to them? And I think that's part of the reason why, to go back to where we started the show, definitely worth a rewind or a podcast listen or an on-demand YouTube click if you missed it. Why I love what they did yesterday so much, bringing all those quarterbacks in together, is because you don't get the scripted meeting version of them that they've been doing on all these different 30 visits and all these different ways where they've talked to decision makers. You get them in a group of their peers and they let their guard down a little bit, or it's a different situation, and all of a sudden you're off script, and how do you handle it? And I think that's why they did that yesterday, and I think that's why it was a really good idea. That's the short version. If you want the long version, check out the first segment of the show today. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, you'll hear more from Adam Peters and Lance Newmark on their season or their pre-draft press conference. Then coming up at 6:30, Ryan Horvat from BetMGM comes in, the BetMGM network, and BetQL comes in to talk about the suspension, the lifetime ban of Jonte Porter, and kind of where sports gambling and is going from here, as we've seen more and more athletes get sideways with their leagues. That's coming up at 6:30 here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We will welcome in Ryan Horvat from the BetQL Network, BetMGM tonight at 6:30. Talk the state of sports gambling, as obviously it's become pretty big deal. Always kind of was, but now in the mainstream everywhere. This segment brought to you by Insert Gambling Company here. Every single segment of every single show on television. And then the NBA is like, hey, Jonte Porter, not you, sir. Gone. Suspended for life. Raptors quickly are like, yep, no, we support that. I'm sure you do, Toronto Raptors. So, yeah, we'll talk about kind of the state of where everything is and whether there needs to be more restrictions, whether there needs to be less. Like, where does it go from here with Ryan coming up at 6:30? But before we do that, a couple more minutes with Adam Peters here, the Commanders general manager, holding his pre-draft press conference today. And one thing that you can say, they are certainly able to make moves in this draft, but don't expect one of those moves to come at number 2.
Yeah, I think with the optionality we have in all those picks, anything's in consideration. So, like we've said before, we're going to do whatever's best for this organization. So if that's moving up, if that's moving back, we'll do that. And lucky for us, we have the ability to do so with all the ammo we have.
And Peters would say later that he does feel comfortable at number 2 and doesn't foresee that happening. Now, with that said, that could be posturing just to say, like, hey, Vikings, I know you're blowing up my phone right now. Hey, Raiders, we know you love Jaden Daniels. Hey, Denver Broncos, Sean Payton, we know you love a trade up. You've historically done it like every year. Come on. Up those offers. Got to do better than this. So we'll see. But that 6 picks in the top 100, that is a big, big freaking deal. And Peters and Newmark commented on what that allows them to do.
Yeah, coming into this, we've been really fortunate to have 6 picks in the top 100. Like you said, that's a big deal. And especially, I mean, having the number, it's not just 6 picks in the top 100, it's the number 2 overall pick, and then really high second-round picks, and then 3 third-rounds. So that's a lot that we can do with that. It can really help us. We've done, like Lance has done a really good job in free agency. We all have, and now we have a chance to really supplement that and now build through this draft and with these 9 picks that we have. And so, we're really fortunate to have that, and I think we have a real chance to make this team a lot better.
Yeah, I think with what we did in free agency, it allowed us to have more freedom in the draft to go various different directions rather than need. It really allowed us to blend need and talent. And the quality of the picks, like Adam talked about at the top of the rounds, just the real high quality level of the picks, especially those top 6, really allow us to make a dramatic impact on our roster right away.
It's huge. And I was having this discussion with someone earlier today. When you have the number 2 overall pick, there is an enormous amount of pressure from the outside to get it right. And if you get it right, it changes your franchise in a way that is almost unimaginable at any other position, especially number 2 at quarterback, right? You get that pick right, and you're CJ Stroud, you're Houston, you're set. Like, you've done it. Congratulations. You got the thing that this whole sport surrounds around, which is a franchise quarterback. And by the way, you do it on a rookie quarterback timeline where now you've got 5 years to surround that young guy before you got to pay him and try to win. You're hoping multiple Super Bowls, have multiple shots at it at the very least. Then you pay the guy and you hope that he's Mahomes level and that he's so good that he's worth paying that much. That's the game, right? But if they were to miss at number 2 this year and they get the other 5 top 100 picks right, they're going to be in really good shape and they're going to be in the playoffs in 2 years. Like, unless the quarterback play is truly atrocious. Because unlike in 2012 when they traded up for Robert, they didn't give up draft capital to get to 2. They just are there. Chicago's doing the same thing with Caleb Williams at 1. It's not even their pick. It's actually Carolina's. They're in a great situation because they're not actually a team that is worthy of having the first pick. They're better than that. They're the 9th worst team in the league based off the fact that they are sitting at number 9. And they have some good pieces for Caleb Williams to come in and like be a productive football player as a rookie. And Washington is in a similar-ish place where they have some weapons and their defense now has a floor underneath it on the other side. And, we'll see what happens at left tackle. That's kind of the big gaping hole right now. But ultimately, it's not like the cupboard is bare. And because you are just using the number 2 pick as opposed to trading up and using the number 2 pick, if they do not hit on this pick, will it set the team back? Absolutely. Will it be a missed opportunity? Yes. It is not a fatal flaw. And Peters would probably tell you, hey, look, you can trade up for the number 3 pick, and if you miss that, it's still not a fatal flaw. Look at what we did in San Francisco. Okay, yes, you can make it up. That's a big-time exception, not a rule, but it's just worth keeping in mind about the pressure that you may or may not feel to deliver the quote-unquote potential franchise-saving pick at number 2.
Do we look stressed? There is a lot of pressure, and it's great responsibility, and we take this very seriously, and that's why we've been working tirelessly on this and turning over every stone, and we want to do this obviously for this organization, but for this region, for this fan base, and for the men, the coaching staff, and the players on the field to get this right. So it's great responsibility. With that comes pressure, but that's what we signed up for.
And if you don't like that, then why are you here? Last but not least, to the methodology that more picks is better, there just has to be humility that you're going to make some mistakes along the way. Not everyone is going to work out. So, again, top 6 picks in the top 100. Peters, more questions about pressure versus kind of being okay, not being okay with, but understanding that their mistakes will be made.
Yeah, I think, Ben, it's it's people evaluating people. So, I would love to sit here and say we're going to go 9 for 9. I hope we do. I have great confidence that we will, but there's a slight chance we won't. And so, I say that, I'm joking, but there's a lot to that. Having 9 picks really gives us that, where they say you have more swings, or however you want to put it. So we're very fortunate to have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all situational, honestly. There's times where somebody is really jumping out at you as being available, and there's times where you're like, man, there's nothing feels right here, and it might make more sense to go back and take some extra swings later. So I really think, for me personally, it's always situational. It's not like a steadfast philosophy.
And a lot's been made over the last 24, 48 hours about bringing in the 4 quarterbacks. I know you in the past at San Francisco, Adam, have brought in different prospects before. Is it different with quarterbacks, or what's your sort of philosophy behind bringing in all these guys together?
Yeah, I don't think it's very different personally with quarterbacks. With all these guys, they all know each other really well. And so what was cool is while we got to see them all together in a group setting at the Topgolf, which was really fun, and I think everybody had a great time, and it was very beneficial to see everybody in a more relaxed environment. They all got a lot of time individually with their coaches, with us, where they were staggered coming in too. So it wasn't like they were sitting in a room together. They all had their own individual time with everybody. So it worked out really well. And then you got a great blend of that, and then working everybody together, in a fun environment.
So there you go. You got multiple things in there. One, talking initially about the importance of having so many picks and understanding that there's going to be misses along the way. That's just the data and what it says and the reality of how it works. But also glad that last little bite was in there as well. Adam Peters talking about the much ballyhooed multiple quarterback visit yesterday and why it was actually a good idea. We talked about that off the top of the show. Definitely recommend rewinding if you missed that earlier in the program, or checking out the podcast wherever you get yours. Just search The Hoffman Show. When we get back, we'll wrap things up here over the final half hour. Real things to come. A hilarious moment from the Chris Russell Show earlier that we're going to re-rack during Real Things Real People Said in Real Microphones. But next, Ryan Horvat from the BetQL Network, BetMGM Tonight, joins us to talk about the state of sports bettings. We've had our first, in the kind of modern era, athlete get banned for life with the NBA banning Jonte Porter. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see Ryan Horvat from BetMGM tonight on the BetQL network with us here upstairs, because normally you do your show downstairs.
Yeah.
You guys used to use this studio for like a little bit, didn't you?
We used we used the Junkie studio, we used this studio, and then we were just like downstairs in the middle of nowhere. Back when, I don't know if you were here at the time, we had fruit flies in the building.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So we'd be live on the air, and there'd be just like fruit flies just like flying right at your face while you're trying to broadcast, which was usually tough. I got to say really quick, so I've been listening to the show, actually, since you guys jumped on the air today, and I had a T-shirt on. I was coming back from the gym, but then I had to be Team Collared shirt, so I changed because I know you had the whole wardrobe thing going on.
I did change my shirt in the middle of the show as well. So someone here is upholding the some kind of decorum. And as usual, it's not me.
Yeah. I didn't know if we were on camera, so I wanted to look nice for you, Craig, since you were nice enough to allow me to come on your show.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry that I'm now back in a T-shirt and not also. I feel like I should just pull the collared shirt out and put it back on, but now we don't have time for that.
No.
So I wanted to have you in, Ryan, because, and really, like, sometimes I think of these segments, and I'm like, this is a really good radio topic, and I'm like, no, you idiot, we should do an hour-long podcast on this. And so this is going to be a bit of a truncated version, because we could talk about this for literally hours. The NBA banned Jontay Porter the other day. And like, for instance, many of us learn about this on SportsCenter. And then it is immediately followed by tonight's NBA schedule brought to you by ESPN Bet. And then, okay, let's go to Aaron Dolan for our FanDuel picks.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it is, sports gambling has always been a thing, but it was underground because it was illegal in most places forever. It is now above ground in every possible way imaginable. And it has totally taken over the sports landscape. And I feel like a lot of people are like, hey, like, okay, we're all adults here, but clearly there's going to be problems. So let me just start off with this kind of wide question. When you heard the Jontay Porter news, how surprised were you that a player would be so brazen and ultimately get himself banned? And two, like, as someone who lives in this world day to day with what you guys do on BetMGM tonight, like, how concerned are you that this is happening with suspensions, you know, every couple of months here in the major sports?
Yeah, great question. See, I wasn't surprised. I was more surprised with the Shohei Ohtani stuff, and I don't know what the true story behind that whole thing is with this translator and whatnot, but I mean, it seems like he was up to no good, or he's not very good at keeping track of his money, because I don't understand how 16 million.
I would love to have so much money that 16 million goes missing, and I'm just like, oh,
Right. Like $9.99 comes out of my bank account, and it's for Peacock, and I'm like, oh man, I got to cancel one of these. This is crushing me. Like 16 million. But see, I kind of figured we would see things like this, maybe at the collegiate level, or maybe with these lesser known players, like a guy that's on a 10-day minimum, you know, in the NFL, maybe a special teams player that's kind of bouncing from practice squad to practice squad, just because those guys at the end of the day aren't making Shohei Ohtani money. They're not making Josh Allen, Joe Burrow money. So the Ohtani thing surprised me a little bit more. Now, what surprised me was the stupidity behind the whole thing, because if you're betting Porter props, you know, like, nobody knows who this guy is. So if you look at his rebound props or his point props and you see like 3.5, 2.5, and then you see this huge bet come in, that's a red flag right there. Like, for example, sports books, whether it's BetMGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, they keep track of everything, man. Like, this is why they have track of your social security number, your address, all of your information. Even offshore books, you know, their accounts, they have robots, they have people that are monitoring these systems nonstop 24/7. That's why a lot of professional gamblers get limited, or they get cut off from sports books altogether. So I was just surprised really by the stupidity because it's not like you're using a local bookie. I thought about this though, like, are people going to use their buddies? Hey, bet my points prop over, bet my points prop under. But it didn't really surprise me. It would surprise me if it continued to happen because I think that the league cracked down and did the right thing here. That's what I said on the show right away. You have to make an example right here. Then in a couple of years, next year, we're not going to hear about Luka, Nikola Jokic gambling on games, betting on games. You have to set the tone, set the example right away. And I'm glad that they banned him because, what's the difference? If we see these kind of instances, this stuff happening in professional sports, what's the difference between the NBA, the National Football League, and professional wrestling? The reason people don't watch wrestling is because it's scripted. That's the reason that people aren't betting it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it does scare me a little bit, like doing this show, because I come from just like classic sports talk radio. I was a reporter for the Milwaukee Brewers and the Green Bay Packers. And so I've been in locker rooms, been in clubhouses. And guys gamble. I mean, this goes all the way back to Michael Jordan. Guys are playing dominoes.
They're competition sickos. Of course they gamble.
Yeah, like we've
But
heard
it's
the
what
stories.
are you gambling on?
And that's the thing, man. I mean, I did a whole college thesis on Pete Rose. And at the time I did the whole thing was he should be in the Hall of Fame. He was betting on his team to win. But the more you get older and then you think about it, and no. Like Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame for good reason. I mean, I'm a Cub fan, and it drove me nuts when all of a sudden on the Ivy you had the billboards, or you go to Arizona and you're at the stadium and you see the BetMGM billboards. I probably shouldn't be saying this because, I work for the
BetMGM tonight, coming up in 23 minutes on the BetQL network.
But like you said, man, I mean,
that cuts to the heart of it though, right? It's like, it's one thing for sports gambling to exist in the universe and for MGM, which is ultimately like, they're a hotel company that survives off the gambling arm. Like that's, I'm assuming, where most of their money comes from. It's not just charging room rates. Because if you go out to Vegas, you can get a very good rate on a room because they assume that they're going to screw you over at the gambling table. As my old pal Ian Fitzsimmons is fond of saying, they don't air condition the desert because they lose, right? So the gambling is going to exist, and companies like MGM or FanDuel or DraftKings or whoever, them doing it is one thing. For there to be an official betting sponsor of a league that just bans someone for life for betting, to me, does seem a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that would be kind of my question is, did the leagues, because we understand why they did it, there's immense amounts of money to be made. And there is something to say of hey, if they're more involved, they can be involved, there's an exchange of information, it's all above board. That's all great. But it's a really hard mixed message when it's yeah, we're going to make all the money off of this, but you don't dare participate. And do the leagues need to reconsider their positions and their involvement here in order to draw cleaner lines between the gambling and the league / the sport?
I think they really do. I mean, and there's a couple different ways at looking at this, right? I mean, you had the situation in the NFL, right, with Jameson Williams and those guys. In the rules where this is what I kind of wondered when we started really promoting sports betting and all the apps started popping up is, all right, so if you're in the NFL and you're in your locker room, you're at practice, you can't bet on games. I'm not talking National Football League games. You can't bet Major League Baseball. You can't bet NBA.
Your team hotel watching your team, your college team, your alma mater on a Saturday night before your game, because you're at the team hotel, you are not allowed to bet on that game.
Yeah, but if you're at the hotel or you're elsewhere, then you are able to. And so I just think that, I mean, there's just this fine line, man. And that's why I know that they've offered courses before the season. They sit down with all the players. But I think that we're going to continue to see stuff like this because guys really don't know what they can do, what they can't do. And sometimes it's naive as this sounds, as stupid as this sounds, you might just be in the clubhouse, in the locker room, and accidentally place a wager. So I don't know what they're going to be able to do here, really, to be honest with you, man. I think we're always going to have these instances, these minor situations, not minor situations, but we might see the 12th man off the bench or a guy that's on, like I said, a 10-day contract get caught up in something like this. But I don't think we'll ever see any of the major players get caught betting on the profession that they're in. You know what I mean? I don't think you'll ever catch Aaron Rodgers betting on football, but you might.
Who knows with Aaron Rodgers?
Exactly. But you might catch him betting on the National Basketball Association.
Totally.
Or betting the ponies, which I don't think that should be an issue no matter where you're at.
Well, that becomes there's a slippery, and again, this is if we did the hour podcast on this or whatever longer, it was these guys have friends in these leagues, like, insider trading essentially is what we're looking at here. And that's not legal either, by the way. Like, you can't have your buddy place the bet. Like, that is, if you get caught doing that, it might be harder to be caught.
Yeah.
But if you do that, like, that's going to get you and your buddy in a hell of a lot of trouble. And you as the athlete specifically are going to bear the brunt of that. So there's that element. But I think my thing, Ryan, that I don't even know if I struggle with it, to be honest, but where I'm just like, this doesn't seem right. There's a level of hypocrisy here, is the leagues engaging in it. Now, what I would say is this. If this includes, let's say the NBA, for example, the salary cap and thus what players get paid is a percentage split of BRI, basketball-related income. If the money they make off gambling sponsorships is considered part of BRI, the players are making money off of the gambling money, which is exactly what is happening. So it's not like the players don't get anything from it, and thus they should just be happy and be like, cool, I get to be paid by FanDuel without having to place a bet. That's a dream. If you get the MGM endorsement, let me tell you, we had it on this show when we first started. That was good money. I'll take it. It's better than having to place bets and win them. So I do understand like why these leagues do it, and it is beneficial for everybody on that end of it. But there is a level of hypocrisy that I just don't know if is sustainable long term when you have the official betting app of insert league and nobody who works in the league is actually allowed to use it.
I mean, like you said to start the interview, man, it used to be so niche, right? Like, I remember I was just producing a radio show, and I liked to bet college football, the National Football League, and I went up to my program director at the time in Milwaukee, and I was like, I have this great idea. On Sundays, we should do a sports betting show and a fantasy football show. And he's like, there's no market for this because it's not legal here in Wisconsin. And it wasn't. This is 10 years ago.
Right.
And I was like,
but that's the thing.
Man.
10 years ago isn't that long ago.
Right. But then remember, around the same time, Tony Romo was out in Las Vegas, and he wanted to take part in or host a fantasy football convention.
Yes.
And the league cracked down. They said, absolutely not. And now the league's in business with DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM. So I completely agree. And even if the players are getting a little bit of that cut or a lot of that cut, there's still going to be the temptation. And like you said, these guys are adrenaline junkies. They just like competition. That was the thing with, like, Michael Jordan would play 36 holes before a 7:30 p.m. tip-off and would be betting $500 a hole, $1,200 a hole. We heard these stories, man.
Right.
And we heard the stories with Michael Jordan. And, there's still the conspiracy theory that that's why he went away for a year, because he was betting on games.
Right.
But I don't think, again, I don't think that we're ever going to see, like, a lot of these, like, high-profile names, LeBron James, Josh Allen, get in any trouble for this. But I do think that this is going to continue to happen. And I do think that maybe, right, like you said, the leagues might have to distance themselves a little bit. I don't think the billboards are going anywhere.
Yeah.
That's going to stay in center field or near the goalpost or on the scoreboard. But
we also know that it's not. Like, they might say we'll consider it, but at the end of the day, like, follow the money. And there's too much money to be made, and that is ultimately going to rule it. Unless that money threatens their other money. And that's where things get really interesting, is if people all of a sudden are not interested in the sport because they have questions about the integrity, that becomes a different calculation in those conversations.
And that's exactly it right there, right? Like, let's say that somebody gets caught shaving points or somebody throws a game or an official. Like, go back to the NBA. How many people stopped watching the NBA, right? Like, Major League Baseball, there's been people in and out, but I just feel like if anything were to happen, then the league would have to distance themselves, because then that's a bad look. And like you said, that's when it starts messing with the commissioners and the players and these leagues' money. But until
when it's
something
no longer
like that
a net
happens,
positive, then it's a different calculation. For more on the actual games themselves and the gambling implications there within, from a very safe and ethical journalistic distance, Ryan Horvat and company tonight, coming up in just over 15 minutes right here on the Team 980, and of course nationwide via the BetQL network on the free Odyssey app. Ryan, thanks for popping in, man.
Thanks so much for
having me. And by the
me.
way, the shirt looks great.
Oh, thank you.
When we get
Appreciate
back, we wrap up the show with the real things real people said into real microphones. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Funny moment from the Russell Show in a second in Real Things. But first, I would like to have a bit of a serious, quasi-real things here to end the show, Anthony. Last night, something started to go viral, and it's the kind of thing that sometimes we play during Real Things, but I actually don't really want to give the moment more attention than it's already gotten, and the person who made it more attention than it's already gotten. Greg Doyle is a longtime journalist who has done a lot of good work over the years for USA Today, CBS Sports, I believe he wrote for, but he's been the featured columnist of the Indianapolis Star for a long time, and has called out bad actors. He did a lot of really important work around the Larry Nassar scandal. When Dan Dockich was being a terrible person into microphones in Indianapolis, Doyle was one of the chief people to call him out. And so when he showed up to the Indiana Fever's introductory press conference for Caitlin Clark and did the heart hand signal, and then made when Caitlin was like, "Oh, you like that signal," and he very creepily responded, and then had another weird exchange later that was just terribly cringy and off-putting. Everybody on Twitter dunked on him, and deservedly so. He deserved to get dunked on to the extent that anybody deserves to get dunked on. And I do think that in interpersonal relationships, often shame is not a great tool or motivator for change, but publicly it keeps people in line. There's a place in society for shame. And Greg Doyle should feel shame for, in his own words, being oafish. But it really is about more than that. And that's kind of what I want to hit on before we have a little bit of fun here at the end of the show. And that is simply this. I have for years been covering women's sports. And so watching them get more attention lately has warmed my heart. And in some ways, and not in like an, actually, let me just put it this way, right? It's warmed my heart because the athletes that are out there busting their ass and being amazing athletes deserve attention, are getting attention. But I think what a lot of people take that as is like, it's a charity project. And what I have always done when it comes to women's sports is treat them like sports. It is like, I've had multiple people who cover the WNBA, for instance, come on the show, and we have them on during the Mystics playoffs in the last couple of years. And I will ask them real questions about the basketball, and we'll go back and forth about the basketball. And they'll be like, I never do radio hits like this. It's always like, will people pay attention to the NBA? And we've done some of those segments. We did a segment after the NCAA tournament of like, all right, with Caitlin, who's clearly a ratings behemoth, moving on, will you still watch? But I think it's also worth paying attention to the answers, that the answers were a lot of yes, like I discovered Juju Watkins and I want to continue to watch her, or Paige Beckers, or I'm just like, I realize how good the product is and I want to watch good basketball, and I like this better than men's college basketball right now. So where I used to maybe sit down on a Tuesday night and watch a whatever game, random men's game, I'm going to watch the women now because I want good sports, and this is good sports. And what I think happens with someone like Greg Doyle is they treat this like an event. They treat this like an act, and it's not. It's sports. And of course he would never do that weird thing that he did in that press conference to a male athlete. And it's not to say that it's not worth asking some questions, because the NWSL and on the soccer side and the WNBA on the basketball side are still in their relative infancy compared to their male counterpart leagues. There are questions about survival. There are questions that are more existential. There are questions about popularity and worth, and there's incredibly smart and incredibly stupid commentary out there right now about Caitlin Clark's rookie salary, for instance. But what we, I think, at large can do, if you are someone that would like to see these leagues succeed, and what I've always said is this, is if you want more good sports, then you should root for these leagues to succeed. It's not about gender inherently. It is, of course, is a part of a larger system, but that's a larger discussion, and we don't have time for that right now. But if you just simply want more good sports to choose from, and especially for like the WNBA and the NWSL, mostly summer leagues in what is, other than baseball, a sports dead spot, then you should support these leagues, because it means that the product will continually get better and the athletes will continue to be better compensated, and the ecosystems around them will continue to improve. And there has been great progress, even if there is a long way to go. But in a forum like this, in a talk show forum, in whether it's sports TV or sports radio, or if you're someone like Greg Doyle with a column, once we stop debating whether women's sports can exist or should exist, once we stop debating their very existence, we can start debating women's sports. We can have arguments about who's better between Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers, or how good we think Clark is going to be as a rookie. We can have the kinds of conversations and treat women's sports like what they are, which is sports. And if we just all were adults and took that approach, then we'd stop having these just incredibly uncomfortable, unwarranted, unprofessional, unbecoming moments like Greg Doyle had at this press conference. Doyle's better than that. And he certainly wasn't in that moment. And the fact that he's going to write some column off it, unless that column says, I'm an idiot and I'm sorry, and here's why I'm an idiot and I'm sorry, and he shows a real depth of understanding, I'm not really interested in that column. He's lucky that if he doesn't get fired, because frankly, what he did was a fireable offense. And I don't say that lightly. But at the end of the day, we need to stop treating women's sports like anything other than sports. Because when you take something seriously, then other people, and especially if you're in the media and you're a trendsetter, you're a thermostat, not a thermometer. When you take something seriously, people will treat it seriously. And I just am so sick, and so many other people who have spent way more time in that world than me. Nevertheless, the athletes and coaches and executives, especially those of whom who are women themselves, I can't imagine how sick of it they are, because they've experienced it tenfold, where I get to dip into the NFL and all these other sports whenever I choose. Is that pretty much our show, Ant?
We got about 25 seconds.
Okay. We'll do the real things. Funny thing that he called himself pedantic, and it was really funny. It was like at 3:20 today. You can go back and listen on the free Odyssey app. Tomorrow, it's a Friday, and we're now at 5 seconds.
We're at 8-7.
6. Okay. Tomorrow, we're going to have another radio show where we talk about the draft. We'll see you then on the Team 980.